Test one, test one. Good evening. Three more minutes. Are you nervous? Good evening, Gapstars! And welcome to day one of a very, very interesting tech conference, Explorer Expanded, where we are exploring new opportunities from meeting industry experts from multiple domains, discovering Web 3.0, deciphering the Metaverse, and much, much more. I am your host, Gehan Block. Now, you guys must be wondering, as to why I am hosting alone tonight, without Dino, my partner in comedy. Unfortunately, though, Dino works for another software company on a part-time basis as a CEO. So he was like, I can't do machang, but competing businesses no machang, so software and all. So I was like, competing? Bro, is your salary pegged to the euro, bro? No, machang. Pegged to the dollar? No, machang. Then pegged to the LKR? Yes, machang. I said, bye, bro. And said, hello, Asma. Yes, I will do it alone. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. No need Dino, man. Yeah. So I am making a killing today without him, so I'm happy. I didn't know about this peg to the euro business before I took on the job. If so, I wouldn't have given Asma my school school club friend discount. So I need back Asma after this. Now, a few housekeeping rules to everyone watching. Your mics are going to be automatically muted. Now, in case... because if you forget to mute yourself, your girlfriend or your wife, walks into the room and goes, hey, you're looking sexy in your boxer shorts and office shirt today. What are you watching? You look really excited. I'm watching the Explore Expanded conference by Gapstars. Oh, so exciting. It really is. Would you like to make it more exciting? How? Shall we explore ourselves while watching the Explore Expanded conference? Yeah, sure. It's on mute. Let's do it. So to avoid a situation like that and to hear stuff that goes, behind where in your room or wherever, we have decided to mute you completely. Okay? So I don't want to have a gender bias as well in case your husband or boyfriend also walks in and goes, yeah, you want to do it while you watch that Explore Expand conference. So yeah, so this is why we have muted all of you. Okay. Number 2, you can communicate with us with the chat box. Yes, you can talk to our speakers, you can talk to us. You can also type your questions into the Q&A box. Now, I know that we have an amazing education and political system in this country that conditions you to not ask questions, prashna ahanna, but please don't be shy. Lajja wenna epa, baya nathuwa ඕන ප්‍රශ්නයක් අහන්න. Number 4, you can engage with us. You may use the reaction emojis we have. Now, please refrain from using the poop emoji at all times. And number 5, we have a bunch of goodies. Be part of our social media giveaway by taking a picture or video of your favorite EX moment. X moment, maybe, right? not a picture of your ex or whatever. And make sure these pictures are decent ones as well. And keep it friendly. Don't be nasty, okay? Now, next up, we have the Gapstars boss, Hugo Boss, to speak a few words. He's a wonderful CEO who is a workaholic, I'm told, and who's always on the phone, nagging you guys. He's close to Sri Lanka. He's very close to Sri Lanka. He has a daughter of 10 months. Who is the youngest Gapstars employee, I'm told. So, nepotism. He's really close to Sri Lanka then. Yeah. He holds a Master of Science in Contemporary Asian Studies. I did not know that you could have a Master's in Cultural Appropriation. Just kidding. He also holds a Master of Science in International Relations, so managing a bunch of Asians in another country is his thing. Dutch bosses, Sri Lankan workers, where have we seen this before? All jokes aside, he's a really great guy. Give it up for the original Hugo Boss!
Are we up? All right. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Mr. Block. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great show. Let me first of all say that the upcoming 2 days are very special to me, as this is a big moment for the EX team, as well as for our company, Gapstars. As most of you hopefully know, Gapstars has been around in Sri Lanka since 2015, but our history with the islands dates back more than 20 years. Today, we have more than 175 super talents in Sri Lanka, making a big impact, working shoulder to shoulder with their counterparts in the Netherlands and elsewhere, building awesome software. And I'm very proud to call Sri Lanka my second home. This is the first time Gapstars is hosting a semi-virtual event this big, and the team behind the scenes has been working day and night to make this happen. I'm very grateful for everyone's contribution and excited to see how everything is coming together. We have an amazing group of interesting speakers that will be sharing some crucial knowledge with the community in the upcoming 2 days. We will go from continuous architecture in practice to Web3, to the Metaverse, to building a world-class product. Honestly, I can't wait to hear their stories and see what the experts has to say. Now, on a more personal note, I would like to add that for me this event is more than just a conference. Of course, we are here to share our experience with the tech community and create awareness. But even more so, this event and all the energy going into this is a testament to our commitment to Sri Lanka. We are facing challenging times, and I want everyone to know, feel, and see that we are here for you, doing all we can to push forward. Welcome to Explore Expanded 2022, everyone. Let's get this party started. Over to you, Block.
All right, give it up for our very own Hugo Boss, ladies and gentlemen. All right, everyone, it is time to kick off the conference with our first speaker for the evening. Now, our first speaker has 25 years of experience in the software industry. He's also the author of 2 books on software architecture, including Continuous Architecture in Practice, published in 2021. During his career, he's had a variety of roles, including working as a developer, software architect, and management consultant. Well, that's his super serious side of things, but there's a very interesting fact about him. He has had very limited interactions with certain Hollywood directors while living in San Francisco many years ago. He's done a session of voice recording for the Young Indiana Jones TV series at the Skywalker Ranch. The lucky person. During this session, George Lucas passed by him and he has waved at him. He's so nice. I would have definitely touched George Lucas. His second interaction has been with Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, the director of The Godfather, who had an office close to his flat, so he once bumped into him by mistake at a coffee shop, and he said sorry, and Coppola said no problem. I mean, if Francis Ford Coppola bumped into me, I would have made him an offer that he couldn't, he would have never refused. Yeah, so give it up for our first speaker of the day, Murat Erdal, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the intro. Yes, that was my limited interaction with Hollywood royalty. A connection to Sri Lanka, but really looking forward to this session. So what I'll be talking about, I think within the wider theme of the conference, is based on a book, or 2 books that I have actually co-authored with 2. That's the topic. So I'll share my screen very quickly. And I will to you, but that's the topic, is continuous architecture and practice. So I'll be talking about basically, it's 4 main sections to the talk. I'll give some context of why we came up with the topic of 6 core principles in our approach. And by the way, this is not an architecture methodology. You could see it more as a philosophy or a way of approaching, how to develop software. We'll try to bring it really we mean and how you would do what's called software architecture, and actually touch upon product management and some of the other topics that will come up later today. And I'll wrap up what I call back to basics. So what do we mean by architecture? What are the basic essential activities you need to do for architecture, which I think is quite key to finish the session on. So hopefully you will find it useful. So a little bit of context, and this is a difficult slide to see. I don't know how easy it is for you to visualize it. But basically, I mean, what's interesting is that there's meetups, and they had Rebecca Worth-Sprock, which is one of the major people in the 90s in software development. They're giving a talk on how the technology industry is so, young and an important topic. So this is really a view on the upper hand of this picture, which is really the key phases you would see in technology, in computers and software development. We don't have to go into all the details, but you can see you go from the well, we've been 20 years in the cloud world, but 10 to 20 years, you get a big paradigm shift in the technology world. And that does change the way we do approach software, and in particular, the technologies we have at hand. Approach and architecture, right? How do we build? The above is the technologies we have. Below the line is how do we approach this? How do we develop our systems? What thoughts and techniques do we use? And there's since 1966. There's for those of you that deal in networks, the OSI model, which is the 7-layer model of the networks, has been around since 1984. So there's quite a lot of has been around for quite a long time. What you would notice is that I think the mid-90s was an interesting period. And that was because there was a lot of key topics that came up, which is also the same time that Java came up. And modeling language, what's design patterns, you might have heard extreme programming, you would have heard some of them. But all, or maybe not, but there was a lot of thought about structured way of approach. Many definitions for architecture, but in summary, you can't say it's the way you would design your system, how you put the structures together and the communication patterns. That all came to a kind of a halt in big impact on the software world. And the main thing that's important on the Agile Manifesto is that it created this tension of traditional architecture approaches, which were seen as too formal, versus applying the Agile Manifesto. And let's see, I think I'm having some problems with my voice. I'll try to get closer to this. Giving us, I guess, a way of delivering software quickly without being too bureaucratic, really the spirit of the team. Then we had topics like continuous delivery come out, etc. And then post the 2000s, you've seen other development approaches like SAFe or Scrum, or on the more architecture side towards the bottom of the slide, things like TOGAF. Or necessary for software development. So that's really where our continuous architecture approach comes in. Before jumping into detailing that a little bit more, I thought I'd also, zoom in on the 2000s plus. And this is just a good way of thinking about, what we do in software and how all these different concepts relate to each other. So before the 2000s, exactly the same, but it's a good way of thinking about it. Sorry, again, my camera somehow switched off. Apologize for these issues. Hopefully I'm back and visible. But basically, if you think about the 2000s, there was a need to develop faster. That was the main thing. We weren't delivering software quickly enough. Then we said, well, we'll do Agile. Provisioning servers or other things. So the cloud helped address that infrastructure bottleneck quite a lot. Then you said, okay, well, I could do that, but deployment is difficult. I need to deploying my software is a challenge. And my camera seems to be switching on and off, but apologize for that. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. And I'm sorry, I'll just stop. But okay, I put my video off because I think there's a feeling that that's impacting the sound. So I will keep the video off and hopefully the sound is better. So basically, deployment is difficult. We use deployment automation, but then you have the issues, okay, we can automate the deployment, but we still have different teams managing the process, and we deal with thinking about how the software world has evolved and our approaches have changed. But if you really think about it, Agile and DevOps, it's all about the team. And I think that's quite an important concept. We sometimes talk a lot about different techniques, different technologies, but at the bottom is everything is the team and people interacting with each other to develop software. To look at example, and apologize for the horrible graphics, but this is from our first book and I didn't have time to redraw it too much. But the goal is, if you say I need to build a cathedral, then basically the agile developer says, where's the shovel? And the traditional architect would say, where's the 5-year plan? And all we're trying to do with our approach is bring these two picture for your system. It will not, your product that you're developing will not be sustainable over time. So that is the approach of the, that's really what we mean by what we're trying to do with continuous architecture. There are all these little buzzwords around there, which, are important. And I'll mention them as I go through the approach in more detail. So basically, and these are I'm going to walk briefly through the 6 principles we have in continuous architecture. The first one is architect products, not just solutions for projects. So for lots of people who work in product companies or startups, that might seem obvious. But especially if you work in large enterprises, like I have done for quite a period, you realize that people don't think in terms of products. They think in terms of, well, systems and projects we need to do. We need a project to deal with some regulatory changes we have. So we just do whatever we need to do that. And we don't think about our software estate as a series of products. And that's quite wrong. The second principle is focus on quality attributes, not on functional requirements. This one is quite key, because what we're saying here is that quality attributes is another word for non-functional requirements. We don't like using the word non-functional requirements. I mean, the joke goes that that means that the requirement is non-functional. But also, if you look at the academia and the industry, the term quality attributes is used quite consistently. But what we mean by quality attributes, like performance, scalability, security, reliability, is that you architect against your quality attributes and not just looking at how your functional components might work. And that is, myself included, an area we normally ignore quite a lot. And we should, the whole objective is to really bring that to the forefront when you think about your architectural decisions. The third principle, which is a very agile-driven principle, is delay design decisions until they are absolutely necessary. What that means in summary is that don't do this big design up front. Don't try to make all your decisions up front. Also, don't make decisions on requirements you're not sure about. you will never come across that requirement, or at the extent you believe it. Another good example is you think your system needs to be configurable, so you might put a rules engine inside it. You might need it, you might not need it, right? So it really is, make sure you focus on design decisions, and I'll talk more about design decisions later, but also focus on the ones where they're very clear and need to make right now. Don't try to design everything up front without getting into the iteration of writing some code, evolving your architecture. We're going to principle number 4, which is architect for change, leverage the power of small. Structured programming, like from 1966, the concept of loosely coupled, internally cohesive components has been around the software industry for decades. Microservices, I guess, is the latest buzzword that focuses on that trend. But what the power of small means is that make sure that you can focus your areas of change and segregate your system for that. A little caution on microservices from my perspective is sometimes the micro term makes everyone feel that you have to, the more small components you have, the better. But that's not the objective. The objective is you have to realize, where do you expect? Because more components means more complexity. So you have to be very careful on how you arrange your system to deal with that concept. So that's our principle number 4, architect for change, leverage the power of small. Principle number 5 is, again, you could say it's very closely related to the DevOps concept, but it's architect for build, test, deploy, and operate. What that means, if you go traditionally architects would only focus on, here's the components, here's how they interact with each other, and here's how it should run in production. But the architecture of this, you manage your test data, how you operate it, monitoring is quite an important concept. So that's, you should architect your system so that it's easily, you can build, test, deploy, and operate it easily. So those shouldn't be an afterthought. And principle number 6, which is our last principle, is model the organization after the design of the system. Now, it's a difficult principle when you read it like that, but there's 2 ways of thinking about it. One is at what I would call the micro level, is basically we want, and it's back to the agile model, you want on a certain product or a certain combo, separate teams that are testers. So the whole concept of a pod, a feature team, those things are that's the micro way of thinking about that principle. The more macro way, which is also related to Conway's law, which states all systems reflect the communication structures within your organization, is to be aware of how your organization is structured. And that structure, if you can't accept that as, I guess, a constraint on your architecture, and just deal with that and manage that. So that was, our 6 principles. We want products, we want to focus on quality attributes, which is basically things like scalability, performance while we architect. We're not going to design everything up front. We want to build, have loosely coupled, internally cohesive deployment, release, and build life cycle, as well as how it works in production. And then we have to be, our team should be structured in such a way that we can develop the products that we want to develop. So those are our principles. I'll touch briefly upon the ways of working and the role of architecture. I think quite an important not a role, and that's something that's, thought we've had from the beginning, but it's been evolving as we go through this process. We really want, you don't want separate people that call themselves architects just floating around independent than the teams, back to principle 6. You can, if you want to have people who call themselves software architects, I do, but it's not a requirement. Architecture of the system. So even though the wording down below is written like it's an individual, it's really important to think about as a skill and a set of activities you need to do, not a role of one individual person. So I'll walk through like some thoughts on how we defined an architecture, and then at the bottom right is our formal definition of is the responsibility of an architect is to drive architectural decisions to a conclusion. That's very, very important. The core unit of architecture is your decision. So when we say, and we'll talk about that in essential activities, but when you say I'm doing software architecture, it's not about the diagrams you draw, it's not about anything else. It really is the architect. If you go to the right, a product focus enables architects to take the long view and focus on stakeholders, right? That's quite important. So for any successful software product, we have 3 roles. If you can see that little picture, that might help you. But we have roles that are a product manager, which represents the client or customer demand. So they say, this is what the market wants. This is what our clients want. You have the role of a delivery manager, which is basically accountable for making sure that the team is structured, they can deliver, and they can meet the customer demand. And there's always a negotiation between the two. Without a role of an architect, it's very difficult that those 2 roles will make the correct decisions. So the architect's role is that there's a coherent vision to that software product, and that software product is sustainable over time. So that is a quite important thing. And again, we say roles here, so it doesn't mean these have to be 3 individually separate people, but people do play those roles for any successful software product. Going one step next to the left-hand side is, and this is important, is that role of the architect is to understand, influence, improve, and communicate what we call the realized architecture. And what that means is what's running in production, right? That's the architect, like the rest of the team, should be accountable for what's running in production. They're not just there to draw roadmaps or opine on things from time to time. It's really to influence what's running in production through the architectural decisions. Communication is also another key skill that is required for architecture. So, then finally, the most important thing is that the bottom right is our definition of an architect. So we're saying the architect enables a software product's implementation by driving architectural decisions in a manner that protects the product's conceptual integrity. A long sentence, but it conveys the key things we say. And the important thing is we say we're driving architectural decisions. So that's important. So that doesn't mean the architect role has to make all the decisions, but it has to make sure the decisions are made with all the stakeholders involved. So that's quite key for us. So going on into the ways of working one step more, and this is more of a context of a large organization, it's really, really important that we don't, I guess, choke decision-making by making sure that everything has to be approved by big governance boards, etc. You want to enable the teams. As I said before, Agile is about teams delivering rapidly. So majority of the architectural decisions should be made by the teams. Obviously, at the enterprise level, certain decisions get made and certain directives are set. You could say, these are our cloud providers, or these are the databases we approve. You could have architecture principles that says everything should communicate via APIs. So you could set those, but the teams on the ground should be empowered to make their decisions. To make this approach work, the most important thing is we need to have trust between the teams. And actually, trust also means visibility. I think that's a big gap we have, and we don't focus enough on communication. You need to know the decisions other teams are making. You need to understand what's happening in other areas of the organization. So that communication and trust is quite important. And obviously, you need feedback loops. You need to be able to, understand what's happening in production, how that's impacting your decisions. Those have to be shared with other people in the organization, etc. So the rules flow top down, and visibility, well, flows both ways, but in particularly bottom up visibility from the teams to the rest of the organization is quite important. So those are some thoughts on ways of working and what architecture means. So finally, I want to wrap up with, we've given a little, or I've given a little bit of the context, talked about our 6 core principles, which are nice, but they're kind of, you could say, so what, and give some ideas of ways of working and what we mean architecture is in developing software. And the final thing I want to talk about is what I call the essential activities. So what this means is that, and I'll explain the diagram, not totally self-explanatory, but what these are the 4 things you need to do to say, I'm doing architecture. You can take everything else, you can add many things, but what's most important is these 4 things. As we said, you have the production environment at the bottom. That's the architecture you're trying to influence. So that's quite important. We said the core, I guess, unit of work of an architect is architectural decisions. So that's what you see there. So we want to have architectural decisions that drive us things. How do we decide which architectural decisions are important for us? There's 2 key concepts. One is quality attributes. We want to know the quality attributes that our system has to deal with, or our software product. And then the concept of technical debt. We want to know, and technical debt, as all of it, is a term we use quite a lot. I think we use quite relatively inconsistently in the industry. But it's about decisions I make that gets my software in production quickly, but have an impact on long-term sustainability. And we have to figure out each architectural decision we make, we have to say, does it reduce or increase my technical debt? And it can go both ways. So that's important. So we're making architectural decisions to influence the production environment. We're driving those decisions via our quality attributes and understanding of our technical debt. And finally, I said 4 things. So you see 3 things in the box. The most important thing is feedback loops. We need rapid feedback loops from what's happening in our production environment. And that goes from basic monitoring to be able to understand how our architectural decisions have impacted, what we've done in production. It's an evolving topic in the industry. There's there's concepts like fitness functions, which are quite powerful. But feedback loops and continuous communication is important, not just technically, but also socially with the rest of the enterprise and organization. So with that, I'll come to a close. So it was a real quick tour of what we mean by continuous architecture and how it can impact how you develop your software products. Thank you.
All right, that was Murat Erder, and a very, very insightful session. I did not understand any part of it, but still, I'm sure most of you guys who are tuning in did, so amazing. Thank you once again to Murat for that insightful session. So we move on to our second speaker. Now our second speaker is a digital Dutchman that called Sri Lanka his second home and the internet his natural habitat. He loves building digital products and companies. He's the founder and former CEO of Harvard.com, the #1 volume hiring platform. After the acquisition of Harvard, he took a short break, but soon realized that nothing is as rewarding as building a digital company. Now he's one of the founders of Carve.com and on a mission to enable the future of work. He also sits on the board of Home of Hope in Sri Lanka, which he co-founded with his wife. and the Netherlands for Ukraine. And outside of work, he has been coming to Sri Lanka for 15 years, yet he can only speak a few words of Sinhala. Now, maybe I can help him with that once he connects. He's the only Dutch guy that feeds his kids kiribat for breakfast. Amazing. And this was also in his bio. When he founded Web Gurus, the company that evolved into Gapstars, he was also thinking about opening a coffee place. If that would have happened, we would discuss cappuccino in his webinar today. Just leave the comedy to me, bro. Yes. He's joining from Washington, so he apologizes in advance if he looks a bit sleepy. Give it up for our second speaker for the day, Baran Rauf.
What an introduction.
Hi, Baran.
What was that?
Baran, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi. I hear you've been coming to Sri Lanka, but your Sinhala is atrocious, apparently. Yeah?
Kohamada.
There we go. Hondai.
Hondai.
Meet oda hondara inna tibba, but yeah, hondai.
Kieda. Oh, that's about it.
Oh, that's about it. So I'm going to teach you a Sinhala phrase right now. Are you okay? Are you game to say it with me?
Couldn't we prepare this, man? I'm so bad at this. Okay,
that's
let's
okay.
go.
That's okay. Just repeat what I'm about to say. Okay? It's a Sinhalese phrase. It's amazing. Everyone's using it these days. So let's go with. Okay. Kaputu kak kak kak. Kaputu.
Kaputu kak kak kak.
Yes, there we go. You want to sing it with me? Kaputu kak kak kak. Kaputu kak kak kak.
Kaputu kak. I want more encouragement in the chat.
Yes. Kaputu kak. Everyone, sing it with me. Kaputu kak kak kak. Kaputu kak kak kak.
Oh my God.
I have a few more phrases.
This is being recorded, man.
Yeah, I have a few.
Recorded. This is not good.
Amazing. Superb. You're a sport. And so I'll hand it over now to Anjana, who has a set of questions for you. All right, Baran Rauf, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kian. Hi, Baran.
Anjana, good morning from Washington. What was that? What guy did you bring to the stage today, man?
Nice. All right, let me set the context first. This is going to be a conversation. I have a bunch of questions for Baran, and I'm trying to pick his brain on how to build tech products which people love. Hopefully, we can learn a lot. This session would be really interesting for engineers who are working for tech startups, as well as tech founders, anyone who's interested in starting a company, which is pretty much everyone these days. Everyone wants to start something and be successful. All right, without any further delay, let's dive into questions. First question, Baran. Let's start with your first startup, first venture. What was the problem that you were trying to solve? And what sort of challenges you faced? And also, how did you achieve, or what did you achieve, rather?
Yeah, good question. So I think, the first, let's say, pretty successful venture was Harvard, but the real first venture was when I was still studying. I started a company in food delivery. So ordering, today what you have like Uber Eats, something like that, but then a really bad version. I was, I think, 18 years old. And the problem was a personal problem. I couldn't cook, so I thought it would be great for myself. Didn't really get to anything. So I think, considering the time it took for food to get delivered, I think the biggest accomplishment was that I didn't get sued for food poisoning. So that was the first. But fast forward, the last company I founded and sold early last year was called Harvard, and it was a volume hiring platform. So the problem we solved was that the organizations that don't hire 10 people, but maybe 1,000 or tens of thousands of people, they need different software to manage that process. And we built software that was tailored to specifically the needs of volume hiring. And we built it in, I think in total about 6-7 years, and got acquired last year.
Cool. So even the first startup, was it with remote engineers, or did you have the team in-house? Tell us a little bit about that part. How did you find engineers for that?
Yeah, engineering. So I've been in the tech industry for over 20 years now, and development resources. It has always been a challenge, but I think over time it became harder to find qualified people. And so I worked with people in Poland, in Ukraine, in India, but in the last ventures, I started working obviously with a Sri Lankan team. So I think since 2008, I'm working with Sri Lankan people. And especially in the setup where people in Sri Lanka, and I think that goes for every country, where they really work on the same product all the time, so they really understand the business. I think that's the recipe for success when it comes to working with remote teams.
Cool. So where are you today? Let's talk about your current product, the startup, the team structure, and let's get the conversation going to the other topics.
Yeah, sure. So after the acquisition of Harvard, almost a little over a year ago, I took a short break, but then you want to build something again. So together with the same people that also managed Harvard, we founded Carve, another company that is focusing on the future of work. And we wanted to take all the lessons we took from Harvard and use it to accelerate this company even faster than before. So one of the first things we did was hiring a stellar team. So right now we're with 20 people. 5 of them are from Sri Lanka. Well, actually, the 4 of them are in the Netherlands right now visiting us. I think it's crucial if you work with remote teams and if you're working in Sri Lanka for a foreign company, that it's very important to make sure that you also have face-to-face time. So I think what we do now also works, having conversations over Zoom, but make sure you have face-to-face time as well. So we have a team of almost 20 now, 1 in the US, 5 in Sri Lanka, and the rest in the Netherlands.
Nice. So I believe you have lots of experience with Sri Lankan software engineers. What seems to be different from Sri Lankan engineers to rest of the engineers that you have worked with, or similarities, differences, anything that you would like to share for the engineers who are listening in? Yeah,
so first of all, for me, working with Sri Lankan engineers means remote, right? I mean, they're almost on the other side of the planet. So I think the first difference is, do you work with people that are literally in the same environment, in the same room, or do you work with people that are remote? And in all honesty, working with people in the same room is always easier because it's so much easier to connect, to have a short conversation with someone. If somebody has a question, you can ask it directly, but also, if you work in the same office, you can overhear conversations. So I think it's crucial for developers to understand why they are building a certain product. Not so much the technical architecture, that's also important, but also, what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve? And for example, just by overhearing conversations, because you're in the same building, you go to the coffee machine and you hear somebody of sales talking to somebody of marketing. These small collaborations, these small communications make you better understand what the focus and what the mission of the company is. And that's the difference between remote and not remote. If you're remote, you miss all that. All the communication that you receive as a remote development team is the formal communication. It's what's happening like in Slack messages. It's the daily standard. So that's the first difference. And I think everybody that works in a hybrid or remote organization should be aware of that there is a likelihood that you miss out of a lot of informal communication. Well, and then focusing on Sri Lanka, obviously I love Sri Lanka. Coming there for over 15 years now. We have a project there. My wife is coming there for over 25 years. My kids, they know more Sri Lankan than I do in the language-wise. So we're coming over to the country. We hope, we try to come at least 3 times a year. So I love it. And I also really, really love the people in Sri Lanka. But if you look at the culture of Sri Lanka, And if you look at the development teams working for foreign companies, for European or American companies, I think the biggest difference is that Sri Lankans are pretty humble. And that's also a beautiful thing. But that also means that sometimes they don't speak up as easily as an American. Like if you meet an American, they start talking immediately, doing the sales pitch, they're all over the place. Sri Lankans, they like to take it easy, to be a little bit more, wait and see. And I think, that's a big difference. And that's also, I think, a challenge if you work for a foreign company as a Sri Lankan person to let go of that, natural humbleness that's beautiful from a personality perspective, but speak up, ask questions, especially because, if you only have stand-ups 20 minutes a day or a meeting with the CEO 1 hour every week, then make sure you ask all the questions and get all the information. So that's the biggest difference, and that's also something you should be really aware of with working, when working with remote teams.
I mean, that's very true, and I've heard this from so many founders, so many startup owners, where most Sri Lankans would not give their opinion in the first meeting. You need to make a connection with them, build a relationship, and then they start talking. Once they start talking, they might not stop. So you need to get to that tipping point.
If they don't share their opinion immediately, then maybe the decision is already made before they do, and then it's too late. And in that way, you're hurting the company or the project you're working for, because this important knowledge is lost. The knowledge of the Sri Lankan people then get lost in decision making, which should never happen.
Cool. Very good advice for the engineers who are joining in. Ask questions. Don't feel shy. All right, let's dive into the next question. Everyone these days if they're in tech, they're trying to build a product, or they're trying to work in some tech services. So what's the mindset change, the difference in mindset when you're building a product from scratch versus working in a tech project? What do you think of that?
Yeah, you mean the difference in if you build something from scratch, like we're doing right now with Scarf, versus, for example, working for a bigger organization that's a little bit more established, and you're from a product perspective building on something that's already there. I think there is a huge difference between the two of them. So if there's already product, you often build incremental steps forward. And you build incremental steps by looking what's already there and consider what's there 100%, and you add 5%, then you can take all the knowledge, the experience, the user data, everything that you've already in the existing product to make decisions moving forward. That's easier. That's where, there are a lot of books written about product management. They always talk about, collecting data and insights. Yeah, that's easy if there's already a product and you get data and you move forward from something that already exists. I think when you build something from scratch, which is also the part that I personally really love, there is no data. There are no insights. Yeah, you can ask customers about their problems, but I think there is this story that Ford from the car company once told that if you asked people back then what they want, they would say faster horses. They would never imagine cars. And I think that's the good thing, the fun thing, that you can imagine something that's not there. And but it requires also working on intuition instead of data. It's really about gut feeling and commitment that the problem that you're trying to solve is really there, and that the solution that's in your head but not out there yet is the right path forward. So I think that's the biggest difference. If you work in an organization with an existing product, you can leverage data, insights, learnings of sometimes 10 years of product development. If you're building something new, it's really about creativity, it's about art, it's about gut feeling. And I think both have the benefits. I think people that work for established organizations in tech teams, they sometimes feel that what they do is irrelevant, right? Because there is a team of 25 people deciding if a button is going to be blue or green. That's the downside. Well, the good thing is the success is more predictable.
Cool, very, very insightful. One point you mentioned about asking customers, or more like getting feedback, making that feedback loop proper so that you hear things, and which is also kind of a insight eventually. What are the other things that you can think of to get your product on the right track so that you make a right product, not just building features? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of proven methodologies for that. So build prototypes. So build something that's not actually working to test it. But also work in a way that is prepared for the situation that you're not on the right track. So I think one of the things, for example, that founders of startups do is they try to build for scale immediately. So they build a technical infrastructure and they don't have 10 users yet, but they already start thinking, what if we have 10 billion users? Like, how would it work then? And yeah, in that mindset, you spend a lot of time in building something that is ready for scale while you're not even sure that it will scale at all. So one of the things is prototypes, but another thing is if you build something, build it lean, build it minimal, and yeah, also accept completely that maybe it's better that in 2 years you have to refactor everything because you are successful, then you are building a year longer on something that was the wrong track and you fail with the company entirely.
I think that's really.
So designing, prototyping, and if you start building, prepare for agility, prepare to be able to change soon.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. So we see most of the founders, they have a huge backlog, they want to build everything. And I mean, you mentioned the point, little is more, that's what you're saying, and try and build even prototypes, not even working software, and get that information up front, learn from it, and then move on with that learning. Cool.
Yeah, and if you build it, so there are a lot of no-code platforms right now. There are platforms like Google Firebase, with in combination with, for example, Flutter, like technical infrastructures that allow you to develop really fast. And maybe they have downsides. Maybe it will not work if you become a unicorn, but it's fine. You can solve that problem once you get there.
Nice. On a question which, maybe open-ended questions. Sometimes your customers, right, might want lots of features up front. You may have an idea, you may have a plan to release little by little, but convincing one of your customers requires lots of features. What are some techniques, what are some strategies that you can share, some wisdom that you can share to founders who are dealing with customers who are asking for more?
Yeah, especially when you start a company and the platform is not mature yet, there is a big risk that customers start defining your roadmap because they have always questions. And right, you're a small startup, they are these big organizations and they have the wallet with all the money and you need that money. So and they think they're all great product managers. So they have this whole list of advice where they really think it's the best thing for your company. I think it's good to always find a balance. So you have people that say you have to create your own roadmap and decide from your own perspective what you're going to build, and your customers have to basically accept that the fact, for example, that it's a SaaS platform, that it's not custom built for them, and accept that not all the features are there. On the other hand, if you're early stage and there is this flagship brand, this big client that, if I sign this client, it will elevate my reputation as a company and it will bring ARR in, then it's also revenue in, then it could also be a very good idea to talk to this customer and say, okay, we will build it, but in exchange, you will upfront me 2 years of license fee. So solve a different problem by also moving a little bit in the direction of the customer. And I think, so for Harvard, for example, one of our first big international enterprises was Booking.com. Yeah, that was a hard one to deliver. We had to build a lot of stuff that was not there yet. But it also really helped us to elevate the Harvard brand and have an example client to other customers. So it's a question you will definitely get, and try to approach it as strategic as possible, keeping your own, but also the customer's interest in mind.
Nice. So talked about striking balance, and also as much as it's a good challenge, it gives you a lot of opportunity, as you said, where once you deliver that, you end up with lots of features and your market get expanded, you can go to other markets and things like that. Yeah. Cool. Next question.
Maybe one addition from a technical perspective.
Sure.
I think when you start to get risky is if you basically duplicate your entire platform to build a specific version for one client. Because yes, if you do it right, you will get a lot of extra features that other customers can use as well. But you sometimes also see early stage that it goes so far that you have your platform for all your other customers and you build a completely new platform for the specific customer, and that will hurt on the long run because that will become unmaintainable after after time passes by.
Cool. So it's whether you go with one big customers or lots of small customers, right? It's a decision, and I have to strike a balance between that decision. All right, this is again a question most of the engineers have asked, and for startups, you build software, you write software, you write code, and you throw them away. And how do you justify that versus taking a lot of time upfront, go through design sessions, proper architecture, and building things which can last longer? What's your view on these two approaches? Because it's not right or wrong, but it's just a view, and it's been practiced in the industry a lot. What are your views?
Yeah, I think it depends on the expected lifespan of the software you're developing. So imagine you're an established customer, or you're an established company. You have a lot of customers using a certain product, and there's a lot of technical debt, you need to rewrite it. And you're 100% sure that the product you're building is the right product because you have customers that are happily using it for a long time. And you're also sure that there is longevity in the concept. Well, then maybe it makes sense to make a very solid architecture, think about the long term, and make it scalable and flexible. But if you're a startup and you're introducing a new concept to the market, and you think you're like, I'm 60% right on the concept, but it could move a little bit to the left and the right still, and you need to learn and to figure out, then I would definitely go for the throwaway code, build something that will get you to the stage to get to hit your product milestones and your commercial milestones. And what I mean is build software that will give you the time to prove that your mission and your vision is right, that your product trajectory is right, and it will also bring you to a financial result that will allow you to raise capital to do a decent rebuild. And if you look at all these aspects, then you know what the expectation of your software is, and then you can decide, is it more the throwaway approach or is it more the sustainable final development approach,
right,
which by the way does not exist because I think after 20 years there is always a new development. So there is no software that will live forever. It will always be old and rebuilt.
I mean, at this rate, technology gets outdated in every 2 to 3 years. Another startup can take you over. I think you mentioned a really good point for engineers as well as the founders. It's the prioritization. It's what you want. When you are a startup founder, as much as you want to build nice features, you have to think of your financial situation as well, which is crucial. If you run out of money, your startup is as bad as not having any features. So that's a very good point of prioritization and how you keep that priority with the information.
I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people follow Elon Musk, and he once said that if you cannot engineer yourself, then you shouldn't be a CEO of a tech company, basically. But you can also reverse it a little bit. If you want to be an engineer at a startup, you should force yourself to be also familiar with all the other aspects of running a startup. So that doesn't mean you have to be a marketing specialist or being a financial expert or be able to raise funds with venture capital. But you should understand, you should grasp the bigger picture, because then it's so much easier to make decisions in your own domain as well. Because I think this architectural discussion, that you have these discussions and developers say, but what we're building right now is not future-proof. Well, you say it correctly. You just said it correctly. If there is no future, it doesn't matter if something is future-proof or not. So, I think you can contribute better to the technical discussions and the architectural discussions if you understand the context in which you're working. And especially people that joined a startup or are thinking of joining a startup, yeah, it's obviously you need to spend a lot of time educating yourself on everything technical, but also dedicate some time and educating yourself on other aspects of what it takes to build a company.
Nice. So before we go into fun questions, one last very technical question, right? This is inviting you to predict future. What do you see the role of, everybody talks about this buzzword, artificial intelligence, AI, ML, in product development? What are your views? This is future.
Yeah, AI. Yeah, it's a buzzword, right?
Exactly.
So, if you write an investor pitch, always use the word AI. It works great. So yeah, let's use the word a lot. It works on the business side. I think when it comes to the product itself, so there are two aspects of it. Obviously, using AI in your product. In my experience, in a lot of startups where they scream and they say we have the best AI in machine learning. Yeah, also challenge yourself on the output of it. So what I think, if you look at AI and machine learning, people also become skeptical, and you're often not judged by the times it's done right. As a company, you're more judged by the times it goes wrong. I mean, if you have a self-driving Tesla, not making any mistakes for a million miles, nobody talks about it. But one accident, and it's all over the news. And if Microsoft introduced a technically very advanced chat platform, people don't talk about it if it's working fine, but if it starts to say stupid stuff, it's all over the place. So yeah, be very conscious. So startups that work with AI and machine learning often promise the world at the start, which is fine, because you need sometimes to scream that you're the best and revolutionary and amazing. You need to do that in order to attract the investors, the talent, the potential customers. But as a founder and as a product person, always be really critical that you that you don't start believe everything that you say if you cannot deliver up to it 100%.
That's very, very insightful. It's as much as it brings attention from the investors and even the customers. As a founder, you have to make sure it works. It gives you what you want, and it's accurate enough, and whether it's practical or not. Sometimes,
exactly.
Having a small form with collecting information is more accurate than you try to predict who the customer is, and then that's where you have to make those decisions.
I think an example is there were a lot of startups a few years ago. I think you used them as well. AI assistants that would manage your agenda or your calendar. You would just put the AI assistant in CC of every email, and it would take care of everything. And there was this big hype, a big fuzz around it. But now in the end, I don't know anybody that seriously uses it. But if you want to schedule a meeting, I see a lot of people using just the schedule it yourself link. So the schedule it yourself link, like Calendly, has nothing to do with AI or machine learning. But in the end, that's the solution that conquered in the end, and not the machine learning AI personalized assistant. And I think there are more examples like that where it was overpromised and thereby failed in reality.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Now, more personalized, fun questions. What do you read? What are the books, blogs that you can recommend for someone who's building a product, someone who's interested in?
Really, I thought it were fun questions. I thought you would ask me my secret recipe for the
Reading
best
is fun
skitty in the morning.
for geeks, yeah.
But talking about books. No, books are fun as well. My favorite book that I advise people to read that start companies, it actually has nothing to do with technology or not with, let's say, software development. I really liked the biography of the Wright brothers. Okay. Maybe this sounds strange, but I will explain. So obviously the Wright brothers are the two brothers that invented the first airplane. That was the first plane that flew. And obviously, airplanes changed the course of history. But if you talk about creating a startup, sometimes you have this idea and people laugh about it. And, you have to prove that it works. And then we think it's hard life, right? Because we're coding till deep in the night and customers are complaining, so it's harsh life. So the startup life, yeah, it's romanticized, but it's also harsh. What I like about the Wright brothers, imagine starting a company back then. There was no venture capital, there was no WeWork, there was no internet. You couldn't just search on Google for information that you need. No, you have two guys and they were making bicycles. They had a bicycle store. And they said, no, we make bicycles during the day, during the week, but in the weekend, we will build an airplane. And obviously everybody was laughing because flying was impossible, right? And that is a startup. So they also invented the wind tunnel. So they had to invent the tools that would allow them to build the invention where 90% of the people would say it's technically impossible. And then in our world, we have a minimal viable product, which is just a piece of software you launch and you see if it works or not. Well, if you build an airplane to test this minimal viable product of them, I mean, read the book, it's an amazing story. They had to go to a place where there was no wind. So they had to go to an area in the US where it's full of swamps, mosquitoes, stay there for 3 months. And yeah, think about an MVP of an airplane. That means that you get into something and you go up in the air and you don't even know if it lands or not. Well, so I like that book. I like the story because it is about innovation and it's about starting a company and chasing a dream and following a mission that's incomparable to anything that I think all of us are doing today.
Cool. The other question is something that we don't talk much, but which is quite relevant. Now, when you work for a startup or you're a founder, you go through lots of stress. There is a possibility of you burning out. How do you keep away from this? Because this is real, right? If you overwork, if you think about it more than what's required, there's a possibility of that happening. How do you in general, because I've never heard you burning out or getting stressed. How do you keep up with this? What do you do to stay away from this?
Yeah.
Is that a difficult question?
No, not. I think that, I mean, if you build a company and it's successful, then people obviously see the success, but they don't see, what it took to get there. Often a lot of failures and struggle along the way. If you can't handle stress, I mean, if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. So I think that's the first thing. Before starting a company, be really aware of what kind of company you want to build. Because there are also amazing companies that maybe don't scale as fast, that don't go international, and that give less stress, but that can be more fun for you to work in. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you have stress, make sure that you have partners and that you work in a team of people that can support you, that you're not on this journey alone. But overall, it will be hard, it will be stressed, there will be trouble, there will be problems. So that's just a fact of life of building a company. And I think your connection broke, but mine didn't. So I'm not sure if people can still see me, so I continue talking.
I'm still here. I think it's just the video. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, cool. All right. So, Baran, thank you very much for all your insight and wisdom. And anything else that you would like to bring it up? We have we have a minute that you can bring it up, anything if you like.
Well, I saw this question from Asiri. How should we prepare for a startup? What are things that we have to master before the first step? I think it's first make a very conscious decision. So there are obviously multiple ways to start a startup. One is doing it on the side. So you have your job and in the evening you're working on something else. I think that's a great way to start, especially your first company. And for that, just go for it. Just start and spend a lot of time on it and see if it works or not. And then if it's successful, the next big decision is, will you go full time? And I think then it's really crucial that you have at least a plan for your first year. So if you build a startup, but you need revenue within the first 2 months to pay for your own mortgage or your own income, these are things you need to really consider and take conscious decisions there. What you shouldn't do, what I think is not wise, to found a startup, I see people doing this all the time, is create, for example, a 5-year Excel forecast. If you build a new company, don't worry too much about what will happen in year 3 or 2. Your only worry is, will you get to year 2 or 3? So focus on the first year, make sure you have a plan for the first year, and understand what the strategic steps are that you will take in this first year, and then just go for it. And Jana, I lost you again. I don't see you, but I think you can still hear me, right?
I can hear you. I think we have a small technical problem of the camera. Camera doesn't like me, it seems, but I can hear you clearly. And yeah.
I was afraid you would get the other guy back and that I had to sing a song again, but that's not the case, right?
He will be coming for you. Don't worry. He's right here. Oh. All right, Bharat. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your...
It was a pleasure.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm back. So that was a very, very, very insightful session with Baran and Anjana. A big thank you to Anjana for hosting that session. Very, very insightful. Just my 2 cents based on something I picked up. Baran was talking about how to get Sri Lankans to talk. Just, 2 things. Throw a party and get some arak. Yeah, and they'll start, singing like a parakeet. All right, so... we will now be heading for a short 10-minute break, right? Now, before that, a small reminder to everyone watching. There is a small competition on. This is, one of those social media competitions that are run by corporates just to feel better that their hashtags were used by a few people. Make me at a company run karna, suddhutika impress karna, adana body attack, so please humor them and tag your favorite moment of the event and stand a chance to win a JBL noise cancelling headphone set for gamers and for people who are single and ready to mingle and, watch like different stuff alone. Yeah. So capture your favorite moment of EX. Again, not your ex. Please do not share pictures or videos of your ex. Capture your favorite moment of EX or Explore Expanded and tag us on Gapstars, @Gapstars. Use the hashtag Explore Expanded, hashtag Explore Expanded, and hashtag Gapstars. Now we will be back in 10 minutes, and we have a few more speakers for the night. So stick with us. 10 minutes. Chukarla inna. Bye. Welcome back, everyone, to Explorer Expanded. This is day one, and this is the final session in the sense we have more speakers coming. So I hope you had your choo-choo breaks and got it all out of you. Our next speaker has over 16 years of experience working at an enterprise scale as an engineering leader and hands-on engineer. As a leader, she works collaboratively and inclusively, bringing together diverse cross-functional groups and using her deep technical knowledge to ask the right questions to get solutions quickly and effectively. With her experience, she has successfully built and led high-performing teams and achieved success in various different environments. Let's give her a very Sri Lankan sort of welcome with a Sri Lankan song which has a name, Chandni Payala Sita Selva Me Ratriye. Give it up for Chandni Jain, Senior Engineering Manager at Front.
Hi, everybody. Let me go ahead, and it's just really great to be here right now. And let's just get started. Sorry, guys, just give me 2 seconds to figure out where my slides are. We're doing it with our Zoom is a new thing, so trying to get things going. Can you guys see my screen? I'm hoping, yes, you can. Hey, hi everybody. Welcome to the session, Engineering Management, the Way Forward. So I'm Chandni, and I'm the Senior Engineering Manager at Front, and let's get started. This is like the high-level agenda for me. Today, we're just going to start with an introduction, just a little bit about me, how I got into computer science and how I got to where I am today. And then let's talk about this engineering manager role. Like, what does it mean? And like, what is it like? What does it all entails? Then we'll talk about what makes a successful team. And then we can talk more in detail about the 3 Ps, the people, the process, and the product, just on a high level, okay, and how you can be a successful engineering manager in the industry today. So this is my journey. Like, my journey in computer science started with undergraduate degree in computer science. And then I moved to do my master's of software engineering at CMU. I was recruited out of CMU by Salesforce. And at Salesforce, I started as a quality engineer. From there on, like, I moved on to being a tech lead, and then I moved into management. I started with being a QA management. And when Salesforce merged both the dev and the QE roles, I was requested to be the service owner of FileForce. FileForce is like a blob service that Salesforce had, and it's a homegrown service, and it's kind of runs almost 50% of the customer data. So that was the first time I stepped into that engineering manager or service owner role. I had the opportunity to own both block and blob services and Kubernetes platform to operationalize them. And being the service owner mandate, I was responsible for the engineering team, the product, the design, the architecture, the delivery, the infrastructure operations, compliance, and customer interactions, like the whole gamut. It was like end to end, like basically I was responsible for everything. After 12 and a half years, I decided to kind of move to try something new, and I decided to move to Lyft. There, I started with a reliability engineering management position. I kicked off the reliability engineering organization. And towards the end, I took over the team, which is responsible for the app used by all Lyft drivers as an engineering manager. After Lyft, I worked for a short period of time at a company called Ice Cream Planet. Yes, it sounds very similar to Ice Cream Planet. That's what everybody calls it. But Ice Cream Planet is a streaming backbone behind a lot of your live sports, like when you watch Super Bowl or when you watch March Madness or in cricket in New Zealand. So that's all streamed by Ice Cream Planet. I've recently joined Front. Front is a customer communication hub that surrounds high-stake conversations with team collaboration capabilities and contextual data to ensure responses are always accurate and always fast and deeply personalized. So it's trying to make working together easier and being able to collaborate and make our lives like happier. And at front, the specific team that I'm managing is called the deliverability team. And again, it's one of our high stake teams. And it's because it's the pipe that connects front to the outside world for both incoming and outgoing communications. So that's just a little bit of history about me, where I came from and how I ended up in management. Let's just talk about who is this engineering manager? So, and what does my role entail? What do I do every day? An engineering manager directs, plans, and coordinate activities while growing a team of engineers. It's juggling people management, project management, and having technical knowledge to deliver the right product the right way. To be a strong engineering manager, you need to have both technical and social acumen. You need to be able to build and grow a strong team of engineers, build relationships with your product managers, cross-collaborate with your peers and teams, and communicate up and down as well. You might not be writing code, but you need to be able to understand the code and design, and be able to ask the right questions and guide the team of engineers to make the right decisions. End of the day, the buck stops at you. You're accountable and you're responsible for the success of the team. I know it sounds like a lot, but do you really think like basically this is like an engineering manager's role? So let's talk more about like basically what it all entails. So I call this a tripod. I call it a trifecta. There's like 3 Ps. This is the product, the people, and the process. Those are the 3 components of a successful team or a successful company. Once you kind of have them down, you have like a path to success. The engineering manager is like right in the middle of all of this, keeping all the 3 legs stable. First and foremost, you need to be building the right product or feature, something that adds value to the company's bottom line. You need to understand the what and the why and how the feature makes a difference. Once, as a leader, you understand the value proposition, you can help build the right team to execute on it. Next key component of this trifecta is the people. Find the right people and they'll make the vision a reality. And lastly is the process. The process needs to be there to aid the people to be successful in delivering the product. The process is for the people and not the other way around. As an engineering manager, you influence it all to make it a successful team. I think I get this question a lot. Can one person do it all? And how do you do it all? And so like in the next few slides, I'll try and walk you through a few of the techniques that I've learned over the years, or like few of the things that I've learned to prioritize or focus on to actually be successful at this role. The first thing foremost is the people, is assuming that you already know what you're building, you really focus on the people, the team. That's the most important thing you have to start with. Think about any sports team. Each member in the team has a role to play. Each player brings a certain skill to the team, and they complement each other to form a winning team. Similarly, you as a manager or a coach have to be deliberate and handpick the engineers. Truly understand what are the skills that you need on the team to make the product successful. When you hire an engineer, you're not only looking at their technical skills, but you're also looking at their culture fit, how they collaborate, and how they take feedback. You might wonder, like, why do I care, like, if it's a culture fit? But all of these things really impact how they gel together with the rest of the team or rest of the company. Include your current team in the recruiting process as well. I like to ask my engineers to think, like, would I enjoy working with this person every day? Could I learn something from this person? After all, like, we spend most of our hours, of waking hours, working with these people. So we really need to be able to enjoy working with these people and just kind of be able to have fun doing that. So you really have to connect with your team. Like, the next question comes up, okay, what's the right size of this team? The right size of the team should not be too big, but should not be too small either. If the team is too big, you'll end up with just like, kind of like if you go to a big party, there's a lot of mini conversations that start happening. There's lots of little group conversations that are happening. So that's what ends up happening in your team as well, that you have smaller sub teams with multiple different conversations that are going on. But if the team is too small, then you might not have enough diversity of thought. And as a result, you might end up not with proper decisions. Or the team might be overworked. And as a result, because they would lack the bandwidth, they might make slower decisions, or as I said, they're really overworked. And you risk burning the team out. Once you have this right set of team right set of individuals, right set of people that you've hand selected, you really need to invest in the team and take care of the time to maintain the team stability. It takes a huge amount of time to find the right fit for the team. Also, there's a big monetary cost to onboard a person and kind of have them come join and then like quit or then leave. There's like a big monetary investment that costs to the company as well. Also, it takes time to onboard a person. There's like engineering time that you're spending to onboard a brand new person onto a team. A constant churn also impacts the team's dynamic and hence the productivity of the team. The next thing to focus on is there's always multiple ways to do a thing. You can cheat on an exam and get 100%, or you can put in the hard work and get the same results. Your core values really guide you how you achieve the results. Similarly, for a team, it's really important to have a core values. Generally, at a company level, or you have some core values or guiding principles, and those kind of impact your team. But if they don't, it's really good to have some core values that can be the guiding principles for your team. It is vital to create a team where each member shares a bond and interacts freely. This happens when they align with the team leader's values and work in unison and to achieve a common goal. When the team members start believing they can all win together, they'll get more done. The shared values and high level of interaction and the sense of trust among members is important. And that constitutes to a cohesive team and in turn increases your productivity. For a team to be able to execute very successfully and not be able to be red taped, as a leader, you have to ensure that they have the relevant information and the context that they need to easily access and the information, and so they can be more efficient and they can be more effective. The last piece that I have is inclusion. When you hire a diverse team, it is really, really important to focus on inclusion as well. You need to recognize that everybody is different, and we need to embrace those differences and embrace the new perspectives those differences can provide. We actually had a diverse team to get those different perspectives. So you really, really have to be consciously make the effort that those diverse perspectives don't get kind of diminished. The importance of a leader is in helping a team member stay focused on the vision and through constant communication. Be like a broken record, constantly reiterating the North Star and what are the values and what are the values that are going to guide us to achieve that North Star. So constantly repeating and constantly reiterating, constantly having the team reset and refocus, just be the broken record. Next thing, now we move a little bit more towards communication. For a team to collaborate effectively and complement each other, they need to talk to each other. Think of any relationship you've had. In a relationship, if you're not honest and you're not able to have an open communication, the relationship kind of deteriorates over time and ultimately it ends. The same applies to the team as well. The team members often hold themselves back from voicing their opinion and thoughts in the meetings because they feel too vulnerable to do so. It could be that they just feel they're just too juniors and shouldn't be asking the question, and they don't want to just question the senior engineers or senior architects. Or it could just really be that they're just introvert people and who don't feel comfortable speaking up. So as like an engineering leader, your job is to build a culture where there is no dumb question. And it's okay to challenge and it's okay to have an opinion. You want the team to come to the table with an open mind and have a healthy, respectful discussion and not an argument. There's like a fine line between a good discussion and an argument. And as a leader, it's your job to make sure the team kind of understand where the line is and they respect that line. At the end of the discussion, there'll be times where everyone is not in agreement. And as a leader, you just have to make a decision. At that point, not everybody has to agree with the decision, but they have to be okay with the decision. They have to commit to the decision because we are all in it together. Another big part of communication is, as a leader, you have to know your team. Really understand each and every individual team member. This allows you to really kind of understand each team member's behavior, personalities, their thinking style, how they work. And then actually you can actually influence the team's processes and guide the team in a direction where they can have the healthy discussion and they can have a healthy communication. Just a simple example is like I talked about introverts. So like you can like maybe look at having all of the discussions kind of be in documents as a pre-part of the meeting, and then you can actually have the actual discussion. So this gives introverts a chance to add comments, add their thoughts ahead of time. Also, this applies to people kind of who like to kind of mull over things, and they just don't say stuff just right off the bat, and they just want to think through things and then talk through things. So it just gives an opportunity for those people to also give their feedback. Just simple examples of things you will change based on how your team like works or how their personalities are. Next thing, the product. Yes, we identified what we are building, but as part of that, we also need to really identify goals and milestones. The goals, they need to be clear and very well understood. We need to understand how each of those milestones impact the company's bottom line. Each of these goals should be measurable. That's very key because you really want to make sure that you're actually moving in the right direction. And if a goal is not measurable, it would be just hard for you to tell that. The goal, of course, has to be achievable. Given the resources and the constraints the team has, otherwise we're just setting ourselves up for failure. The goal represents the cornerstone of a high-performing team. Without it, the team members won't be able to align their efforts in the same direction. And since the teamwork is just a means to an end, an effective team must be purpose-directed, and they have to be able to measure themselves against the results. The next part is just like, yes, we got the goals, we're measuring against them. We have to constantly keep checking how are we doing against the goal. We constantly evaluate results, and if needed, we reset. Just think about when you're driving a car, you are always trying to do minor course corrections to stay the course versus just trying to make a big swing and just kind of that big jerky swing. So it's always better to constantly evaluate how you're doing and do minor course corrections versus just a big swing. At the same time, I always like to remind people, change is the only constant thing. The company priorities, the industry, the market condition can change. Your team's configuration can change. People, you are trying to protect your team. You're trying to keep your team stable, but things happen. People do leave. There's a lot of things that can change, and there's a lot of things that can cause that change. So you really need to always be thinking of how you can adapt. You can't just be stuck in a position. You have to always be able to adapt. That is something, and that's why change is the only constant thing. The last, one of the last pieces that I want to say is overall, think about being a coach. Just the way a coach is on a sports team, on an engineering team, in the team leader or the engineering manager takes on that role of being the coach. Your role is to help individuals grow and hone their skills so the team can execute like a well-oiled machinery. Build a culture of constant learning and improvement. Individuals should challenge each other and in turn learn from each other. Mistakes will happen. There'll always be things that go wrong. But the key thing is to learn from them and constantly be improving so that we just don't make the same mistakes again. As a leader, you really need to focus on listening more than talking. Listen to your team, listen to the individuals, listen to all of them and gather your data points and assess things, and then you move forward. Your success lies in the team success, not only you as an engineering manager, but also once everybody in the team believes that, then we can all be successful together. So you want to build that mindset and make the team be responsible for their success in turn. Okay, now you picked the smartest people, given them the right processes, the right direction, given them the guardrails as well. What's my role now? Now my job is to let the smart people do their job and they'll figure it out. I don't want to be in their way. Instead, I can just focus on being a multiplier. I get to be the debate maker. I don't have to have the right answer always, but I need to be able to ask the right question to start the debate. I want to be able to be the liberator, just giving the team the space to do their best thinking, to be able to do the best work, to be able to come up with the best solution to a problem. I want to be the challenger. I want to set, now you have a very high functioning team. Now you want to stretch the team. You want to set up stretch goals for the team. Of course, I have to be careful about not burning out the team, but constantly looking to optimize and making it more efficient and still stretching and kind of making the team deliver better and better. I have to be able to invest back in the team, make the team feel vested in themselves and their work. They should be proud of what they're doing and they should be enjoying whatever they're working on. This just kind of makes the team invest back in themselves and want to do better constantly. So that's the kind of leader you want to be. In the end, and the last thing is like be the champion and the advocate for the team. You're constantly communicating and building relationships with peers and leadership so you can represent the team and be the advocate. And last but not least, celebrate the team's success and ensure the team gets the right credit and accolades from all. This is very important. The team needs to feel valued, team needs to feel appreciated. And as an engineering manager, it's your job to make sure to get the credit where the credit is due. And that just brings us to the end of our slide deck. Thank you, everybody.
All right, a big thank you to Chandani for joining us for that very, very insightful session. Right, let's take a look at what we have next. All right, next we have a tech lead fireside chat with Anjana and Hasita and all the speakers of day one, that is Murat, Baran and Chandani, who will also join them. Now to introduce our panelists, panelist number one, Anjana. Anjana has over 18 years of experience in designing and developing software for multinational organizations in the USA, Netherlands, and UK, and possesses a proven track record of working with large global teams to deliver scalable enterprise solutions. Previously, he was a software architect at Virtusa, head of engineering at Cyber LMJ, and vice president engineering at Cake Labs. And currently, Anjana is the co-founder of Nuclei Technologies and the tech lead fireside chat alongside Hasita Lianage. He's also the CTO of Inshomi.lk and a technology consultant at Gapstars. And our panelist number two, Hasita, is a software engineering lead with nearly 20 years of experience in developing, designing, and managing a wide range of production systems and teams, from high-frequency trading systems for financial markets in the US, Europe, and Hong Kong, to regulatory compliance systems for the Philippines government, mission critical e-commerce platforms for Fortune 100 corporations, and prop tech in Australia. Currently, he is the Vice President of Engineering at Different, where he develops engineering processes. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Anjana and Hasitha, who will now lead the fireside chat.
Thank you, Gyan.
Thanks, Gyan. I know that was a bit of a mouthful, right? Our intros.
I know, that was like big intro. All right.
Shall we get started?
Let's get started. Hi, Murat. Hi, Baran. Hi, Chandi.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys. Hope you enjoyed your sessions.
I did.
Cool. So to get started, I think let's do a small recap of what was discussed. So I think Murat spoke about continuous architecture, and Chandni just spoke about engineering management, and Baran, right? I'm trying to get the name right.
Yes.
Baran spoke about...
Baran Ruff.
Yes.
He spoke about product management, but in a broader sense of building a product and what needs to be there and the mindset and lot.
Who goes first? Shall I go first, or
Yes, go first.
I shall go first, and I've been taking a lot of. My first question is for Murat. I've been actually taking a lot of notes as well.
Me too.
So a question came up as you were mentioning your 6 principles, and this question actually came up from the audience as well. So I'll try to read out what the audience member asked.
And we'll go round robin. We'll ask
Yes.
questions from each speaker, and if you like to contribute to a question that is being asked by another speaker, which is also fine.
Great. So the question is related to your 3rd principle, which I believe is delay design decisions, right?
Yes, correct.
All right. So the question is around how can agile teams deliver effectively without seeing far ahead? If and when requirements changes drastically, you will have to go back and tear down and re-architecture big chunks of your applications, right? Is that an acceptable risk? Ask the audience member. You are cutting out there.
Murat is on mute.
I guess Aaron did when he was talking about. No, I'm not on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So Barant mentioned that as well on his talk about, a startup in particular. Like, you don't want to architect something based on AI, right? So that's quite important. And that's why we want to focus on the attributes, right? That's the key thing, right? But the quality attributes that you know about, not the ones that you dream about. And you do have to come. I mean, if you look at lots of successful startups, they have had to tear down and rebuild their applications, right? That just comes with the way things go. So it is, but you can make some foundational decisions, like the database technology you use is quite key. If you re-architect around the database technology is quite important. But other things like how you do messaging or things like that can be changed, less drastically. But in summary, yes, if your requirements change significantly and your quality attributes change, you will have to re-architect, because the objective is try to make decisions with what not what you hope will happen.
That sounds good. That brings up a follow-up question, but let's do round robin and we will come to the follow-up question later.
Cool. Second question is something Chandni brought up. It's about the striking balance between people, product, process. I believe as an engineering manager, as someone who, as a startup or someone who's adapting this process, what are your thoughts? How should they start this?
I think as a startup or starting this process kind of thing, I would start lightweight. Basically, as I said, like you focus on the product and your people first, and the process would come in third in there, because you need to of course, you need to build the right thing and just to kind of break the market. And I think we were just talking the right question. You might have to reset like what product you're building and just change directions as well. But hire really smart, strong people. And the rest of the process aspect, keep it very lightweight, because you just want, as I said, it's like the process needs to be for the people, not the other way around. So I would focus on the product and the people to start with.
Cool. I think I'll throw the same question at Baran as well. I think Baran has a different opinion, or maybe same opinion. So Baran, given you have people, product, and process, how do you see this combination working, and where would you invest more or less? And what are your opinions in general in these three? Because it's
focus on the people, make the people conscious about the product, and the rest will follow. So if you're building a company, if you're starting a company, don't worry about processes in the beginning. It will come.
Cool. All right.
Okay. So I have a question for Chandni. You have said that you should be deliberate and handpick a stable team, right? So I have some experience building teams as well. What I've found is handpicking a stable team is very time consuming. And if you happen to work for an organization that wants to scale very fast, that you don't always have the luxury. And I've heard some people say you need to have what's called a pyramid structure, where you're deliberate about picking the top of the pyramid, the senior people, and you hire a lot of juniors with a little less, with a lower bar, I suppose. What do you think about that?
So I think I feel like there is a lower bar. Or the bar is, for one thing, is just technical skills, and the other things is just the culture fit and just how they connect and how they want to grow and do they want to learn, right? So I'm okay. I definitely think you need to have really strong leaders on the team, because they're gonna essentially lead the team through and like help you make the right decisions. So you're really very well involved in there. You do not want to lower the bar. In the next year also, in the ideal world, you do not want to lower the bar. But if, like, as you're trying to say, we're trying to scale up really fast, and like you have to hire like hundreds of engineers in like very short span of time. Even if you want to have, I'll personally be okay with having folks who do not have the 100% of the technical skills, but are really great culture fit. They're great culturally fit into the team, into the organization, and they actually have the strive to learn and strive to kind of just aptitude to learn and like really grow, and that hunger to grow. So that way, you're the top tier team, the leads that you've hired, they can actually help them grow. You can teach somebody how to code, but you really can't teach people's just basic work ethics, if you want to just say. So you can't teach people just the hunger to grow and hunger to learn kind of thing. So I would always, like, if I had to make that kind of decision, that's what I would do.
That's
actually
great.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You talked about the ethics, which sums up to be culture. Let's take that part and go with all the speakers who are in today. If you have a team, what's culture? What does culture mean to you? Maybe we can start from Baran first, then Murat.
Depends again, I think, on the size. So I think if you're a big organization, then culture can be defined. So you have these HR people, and they can basically define and facilitate the rise of a culture in an organization. I think when you're with a really small team, the culture is driven by the people itself. I think, as just explained. And I think the best ingredient for culture is success. So, and that comes back then to hiring really smart people. So if you hire really smart people in the beginning, they will feel success. Success will create great culture, and that will attract new people for it as well.
Murat, what's your opinion?
I'll follow up on, but I work in a large organization, right? And yes, there are lots of HR people running around creating culture, or other people, not just the HR. But I think there's yes, every organization, large organization, has a culture, but I think you can do a lot in your own small team as well. And we have, and sometimes in large organizations in particularly, you worry too much about what you can't control, what's wrong or what else. But you can do a lot in your own team. You can, for example, we work in a very distributed model, and there's this, if you're in Sri Lanka working with people in the US, there's an expectation that you maybe have to join very late meetings. And maybe that's the company's culture, but in your team, you can explicitly make rules. No, we won't do that. We'll give people time back. So there's a lot of things you can do in the team. So I think that's quite important. And when people ever ask me what agile is, I say agile is about the team. The rest follows,
I actually I have two follow-ups. I want to thinking whether to ask from Barand or Murat.
Let's ask from both of them.
Okay, which one was that? Oh, okay. So for Murat, so if we allow teams to have their own cultures, which I believe we should, how do you handle the situation where when you have team members moving between teams, which sometimes happens, there's a certain amount of culture shock? Any ideas on how to minimize that?
Well, I guess you would assume that if they're in the same organization, there would be some commonality. And any team that's, well, this is maybe the optimist in me, but any team that's created a good culture should be acceptance of, be accepting new members, right? So if, so that would be my view. So if the teams are if you assume all the teams are effective, well-functioning teams, bringing in new members, which might have slightly different things, shouldn't be a problem. If they're not well-functioning teams, well, that's a bigger problem than dealing with introducing new members.
That's true. That's true.
That's true, yeah. You want to get Barand's opinion as well and Chandi's opinion maybe?
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, if your organization doesn't allow a team member to change teams without having a culture shock, then you did something fundamentally wrong. Either you hired the wrong person or you built the wrong organization. So, no, I fully agree.
I think I 100% agree with this as well. I mean, I think the basic, there is commonalities, and that's why you're part of an organization. A team can have its own identity, but in the end, you kind of are part of a bigger kind of mothership, if you want to call it. And it has to all fit in together.
You
want to go first? Or
you go.
I shall go. Okay, so this is again for Chandni. So a lot of engineering managers that I know of, including myself, come from an engineering background. So engineers are not always best at people management. That is a skill. This is an acquired skill, right? And I know I struggled with it early days. Any advice you have, somebody who is on the cusp of going from being an engineer to an engineering manager, how do you build this people management muscle, especially to know each person's different working styles, personalities, and make them gel together? Any advice?
Yeah. I think the first thing that whenever somebody comes to me and asks me, is like, "Hey, I want to move to engineering management. What do you want me to? What do you think I should do?" The first thing I really ask them is like, why do you want to move to engineering management? Because a lot of times there's this perception of the only way to go up the ladder is to be a manager kind of thing. You essentially have kind of this power over people, kind of the mentality thing. And I really have to remind them, being an architect or kind of being a tech lead is also equally important. And those are kind of almost parallel tracks that most companies treat them as parallel tracks. So that's my first thing. So I now always ask them to assess, like, okay, what gives you energy every day? Like kind of working with code or working with people. Once you start kind of assessing those two characteristics, then you realize, okay, working with people gives you energy. Then like you start giving them like maybe a smaller team where they actually are like more interacting with people and kind of start working with people. And that's how you train them up. And honestly, people management is the skill. Even though I've been doing it for years, I feel like every day I get to learn something new because every person I work with is a different person. And I almost have to adapt my style, and like it's a constant learning thing, and the only way you learn is by exercising that muscle. There's no other way to kind of just learn that skill.
There's no textbook on this, right? You can't even write a textbook.
No. There is no, I mean, I'm sure there's some trainings and courses you can go for just basic things, but at the end you will come up with your own style, and you have to modify that for every individual that you ever manage or work with.
Anjana?
Cool. So I'll start from Murad. So Murad, people sometimes misunderstand software architecture as something which is only used in enterprise world, where you have large set of departments, then you have to integrate things, you need to have an enterprise bus to do so, and generally the term is attached with very enterprisey world. But in your book as well as in your talk, you talk about this is something anyone can use when you're building a software, be it a startup, be it a scale up. Can you shed some light into, if you're starting something up, what software architecture, where do you fit this in? What sort of roles are needed? Some information so that people who are starting can get idea.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you go back to the basics, right? The architecture is about having a sustainable software product and being aware of what decisions you make. It doesn't mean over engineering it, as I just mentioned. So I forgot who said it first, but every system has an architecture, right? It's not something you define. It always happens. The question is, how much of it are you in control, and how much are you aware of the explicit decisions you made to create that system? So, that's one thing. That's very important. So the main focus of our book is just, that's why we don't explicitly believe in these separate mythical beings of architects floating around in organizations that are independent than the engineers, right? The architecture is, and it should be the accountability of the team. Depending on your culture, you could call certain people software architects, you can give them that title. But at the end of the day, you have a software product, you have a team working on it, and they make decisions. That's the core unit of work of software. So then the rest is culturally how you organize that. But it's really important that you explicitly are aware of why you made those decisions. And there's this perception that, Agile, you shouldn't document everything and everything flows through. But the reason we focus on decisions is you want to understand the rationale why someone went down a certain path. And especially people change in all small and large organizations, people do change. And you end up on a software product that's been around for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And then someone says, why does it have XYZ component? And no one knows. I don't know. It's just so it's there. Or, why do we choose this database technology? So it's really, when you're making your decisions, you're also, I guess, you should think of the future generations. You're leaving a breadcrumb for the future of why this product went down that path. So in summary, architecture is always there. It's just how much you acknowledge it and are explicitly controlling it.
Nice.
Okay, I just remember the question I wanted to ask Barend. So you mentioned, this is sort of a devil's advocate question. I kind of know what I want, like what you would say. Hiring, you said that hiring really smart people is the way to build a team, right? Something to that effect.
Yes,
but
correct.
But being in engineering, we do know that you have this phenomenon of, how do I put this nicely? The brilliant jerk. How do you make sure that in building this team, you don't inject brilliant jerks into the team so that they become later on indispensable to the team and they can behave whatever they want, however they want?
Yeah. So if somebody is a complete jerk, obviously you shouldn't have him in there. In all honesty, if I look at developers over the last 20 years, it's not uncommon that they have, let's say, particular characters. So it's it's a wide range from being a jerk to being, I don't know, the nicest person in the world. And I think as a team, you should facilitate that people can also be themselves. And yeah, what is a jerk to you is maybe for somebody else, somebody that's just straightforward and gives honest feedback. In building a team, obviously, if it's a jerk, don't let him in. But if somebody is really smart on the job, but also is particular in the way they deal, for example, with other people, I wouldn't reject them on forehand. I think when it comes to development, maybe that's different in other aspects of a company. I wouldn't go for only culture, only people that can party together, or people that can hang out together, or people that would also become best friends. I think that's not top priority in the beginning. Not in development.
Got it. Chandani, you want to add any thoughts to that?
I actually 100% agree on that. I think there's like, you are trying to get diverse people. You want them to be able to communicate and be able to understand each other, how they work, but and be respectful. I think that's the key part of it. There is that fine line of like, you are straightforward and you give a very direct feedback, but you are still respectful. You're not just kind of calling people names for the kind of just for the finer things. And I work with individuals like who understand that basically, hey, they are very straightforward and they're like very kind of can come out as a jerk in their communication. So they literally made a working style template. So whenever they work with any new person as part of the introduction, they kind of share this up. This is like, hey, this is how I work. So please don't misunderstand me. This is my working style. And when you start with that openness and transparency, automatically things kind of click together. And like, people don't have to be 100% like buddies, but they just have to be able to work together and like just communicate and just be respectful of each other at the end of the day. That's kind of what you need, but not. Yeah, and I think then nobody is really in that situation of being a brilliant jerk situation thing.
That's interesting, because I have seen some organizations where they have a deck like, here's, hi, I am so and so, here's how I work. Here are my like strengths, weaknesses. Would you recommend that everybody in the team sort of have something like that, so everybody knows, here's how I work?
I think it again goes back to the team's culture, and like not every company has it. Like I'll give an example of like when I started at Front, like the way we introduce ourselves is like, you have to share one fun fact about yourself, or one something that just kind of is not like obviously, but not everybody might feel comfortable sharing that, and that's kind of is actually published in our company directory. But that's kind of the culture they've built. Is like, it's very open, it's very transparent, and like we all feel comfortable sharing just these kind of fun facts about ourselves. So I think it depends on the teams or the company culture that and to give people the option of what level of openness they wanted. I think that's the biggest thing. Not everybody feels comfortable just sharing private stuff as well.
That makes total sense. Thanks.
I'm going to shift gears slightly from culture to type of people. So Murad talked about the continuous architecture, and Chandi, Baran comes from engineering, product, business, all background. So if you have to take product management as a continuous process, what are your inputs for that? How do you do that? How do you make sure the product that you start to build and what you are building right now and what you will be building in the future has some sort of governance, are done right? What are your thoughts on keeping the product management a continuous process in organization? Maybe Baran to start, and then we'd get Chandi.
Yeah, try to understand so you mean like, how can you make it a continuous process, specifically the product part of it, or?
How do you make sure you do the right thing in product management? Like if you take it from the Murad talk about the architecture, how do you?
Yeah. Well, so I think in product, it's all about baby steps. So how do you keep on the right track, and how do you make sure that the track you're on is right? Is not build something huge for over a year and then release it and hope it does the job. So baby steps. make small incremental improvements, learn from feedback, and learning from feedback is not doing exactly what the user tells, that's something different, but learning from feedback that you get, learning from the data that you collect, and based on that, and also your own gut feeling and your own vision, equally important, make the next decision. And I think if you take those steps and you're on a wrong way, then it's only a few steps back to get back on track again. So I think that would be the way forward for product.
Cool, thanks, Bharat.
Yeah. I think I also agree with that. I think it's just that constant check is very important. And it's not only that maybe like when you started off, like you kind of started off with certain assumptions, and as you're progressing, those assumptions could evolve and they could change. Like as I think we'll be talking about, maybe your needs of the customers' needs have changed or the market condition have changed. So those constant checks would let you kind of evolve your product or change the direction as needed, versus just like kind of a big change or just kind of ending in like just a non-starter situation kind of thing. So those constant checks are the most important things. And you get the feedback from, there's multiple forums to get the feedbacks really, but like big companies have a full data analysis teams and like, or just, but in a startup, you might just have to work with your customers directly and get a lot more feedback.
Cool. Something like a follow-up question, but has a slightly different tangent. Product management and UX. So you have the user experience designers coming in and you have product teams working on features. How do you strike a balance and who does what? Because this is something that keeps changing for a while. It used to be product guys designing the user experience, and then we brought the user experience guys into the picture. How do you see these two teams working together? And what are the challenges? What are your opinions on it?
Asking to? Okay, collaboration, that's the thing. So it's not about titles or roles and you decide this. And so I'm the product guy and I decide how it will work, and then you can only make it look good. So it's a collaboration. And yeah, it was design, then it becomes UX, UI. I think now it goes back to product design again, and then it was product managers, product owners. In the end, it's a collaboration of people that want to solve a problem. Where what I think is underestimated in general is the art of the design component. So I think we are on a trend where everything is data driven. So a lot of decisions on product are based on data. And I think there are some nice examples of how that also can go wrong if you just look at the data. So product is also about following a bigger vision and strategy. And when it comes to design, there are obviously conventions. Nobody needs to explain me what a hamburger menu is. But design is also art. And that's what I really like about the design component, that there should also be someone in that team that is capable of creating something from scratch. Because if you now look back in history, you always have these websites where you really think, wow, they did, or these platforms, they did something new. They came up with a new thing that later become the standard. And I think in every product team, there should be someone that at least aspires to defining a standard instead of following it. And those capabilities should be in the team. And if anybody says, I make this decision because this is my role, then you should get rid of that person, because that's never the reason why a decision should be made in the first place. Unless you're the CEO, of course.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Let's lot of collaboration. And we have come to the last 5 minutes. So maybe one more question.
Right.
I saw some interesting questions. There were some questions in the chat as well. And I think that's also interesting.
Yes,
maybe.
Yes. Well, can we get a summary?
I remember one question. Perhaps you have already seen this, Barand. Let me try to phrase it properly. So when hiring the smartest people, obviously there are only a limited supply of smartest people in the world, and there are so many companies, right? So I guess this question from the audience is, does it always have to be the smartest people, or is there any way where we can create an environment in which where we can hire smart enough good people and then build them up to be what we need?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So what is smart, right? So let's first say smart is that somebody that's above average intelligent. Well, if you want to be a developer on a certain level in an ambitious company, that's basically my reference, then you have to be extremely smart in the sense of intelligence. And then it's about capability to learn and embrace new things and willing to challenge yourself and drive forward, basically. And I think that's something that a company can support in, but if an organization needs to facilitate that completely for a person, then for me, that person would not be the right one. And I will explain why. So, I mean, if you're anywhere in the world and you have internet and you have a computer and you are smart, then you can already learn so much just by your own ambition. And I expect if you would work for me in a startup environment, that you took already all those opportunities to bring yourself to a certain level. And if you're there, then the company can take you forward. And I think the bigger a company gets, the easier it is to absorb people that have less knowledge. So not people that are not smart, never people that are not smart, but people that have less knowledge, absorb those people and make them more knowledgeable. But in order to do so, you need to have a platform where there are people that can teach, because how can you teach somebody if you can't do it yourself? And I think so the answer is yes, an organization, especially when you're growing, should also onboard people that are more early career, but at the same time, people that want to get into this profession. I mean, if you look at Sri Lanka right now, I think software developers are amongst the best paid professionals out there. There are a lot of people immigrating right now from Sri Lanka. If you're a software developer, you have all the opportunities in the world. And I think that's the one side of the medal. And the other side is, that you should also put a lot of energy in it to get there. And that energy should be 80% from yourself and educating yourself and find your own resources. And then, yes, a company can take care of the other 20%.
I think that's a great answer. That 80-20 that's exactly right. That's true. Anybody else? I think we have couple of minutes.
Yeah, one question on the group for Chandni. The question is, if you are managing a remote team, is there anything that is different to what you talked about for being an engineering manager?
I think the basic principles remain the same for kind of managing a remote team as well. And I've actually done that quite a lot in the past as well. But it is a little bit more of a high-touch environment because you have to make that conscious effort to actually kind of set up time and like do face-to-face. Good thing is like we are in this world today where we can have the Zoom meetings and which kind of gives you that face-to-face interaction. So you can really like read people and just kind of, it's not only just when you're having a conversation with your engineer or when you're trying to listen to them, you're not only trying to listen to what they're saying, but also looking at the body language, the visual cues, everything else that's going around, right? How engaged they are and everything around it. So just having today's technologies really help kind of managing those remote teams. And it's just, you have to make a little bit more of extra effort because you can't just have that like, okay, walk over to the desk and just check in if everything is good or just like today or those hallway conversations. But it is possible. And I mean, the last 2 years of pandemic has taught us like this is actually very much possible and we can all work together and still collaborate together. It just takes a little bit more effort. That's all.
Cool. That makes sense. Last question. We have one for...
Go for it.
Baron. Question is how to prepare and what are the things that we have to master before first step. I think he or she is talking about starting a startup. How to prepare yourself for a startup. I believe that's what the summary is.
Yeah. So in general, everything you prepare for will not happen. So that's
good answer.
So it's also building a plane while flying it. It's jumping in a pool before you can swim. So how can you I think the best.
Baran, I think we lost your audio.
Work out the way you expect it to work out. And in the beginning that you create an environment where you can work on your startup. So if you have no financial backing, don't quit your job and start working only on your startup, because then you will run out of money. So maybe start next to your own job. Make sure that you gather, I think, the right people around you. I don't see a lot of startups that are founded by one person and where the whole success was also brought back to the single person. So make sure that you work with the right people, because in the end, that's your founding team. That's also your first hires. And I think the best advice from my side would be just do it. Go for it. If you don't succeed, if you don't get rich, you will. If you don't complete your mission, then still you will learn so extremely much, so much that you can use in the rest of your life. So definitely go for it.
That's a very insightful answer.
Great.
All right. So I think
that's the end of it. Thanks so much, Chandni, Barend, and Murat. I guess that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Okay, thank you
so
guys.
much.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
A big thank you to Anjana and Hasita and our speakers. Thank you so much. A big thank you to everyone who logged in. I must say that was a lot to take for my tiny little brain, but I'm sure each and every one of you nerds who logged in enjoyed all our sessions today. We have another amazing session tomorrow as well with a whole bunch of speakers who will speak about a lot more tech stuff, which I will have no clue about. But we would like to thank our partners who have supported us throughout to make Explorer Expanded a success. A big thank you to Hatch, Articulate, Slascom, and ISAC for partnering with us to make this event a success. And also a big shout out to the IIT Alumni Association. I just made up a new association. So sorry there. So we will see you once again tomorrow for day 2 of Explorer Expanded. My name is Gehan Block, and it has been my pleasure hosting day 1 of Explorer Expanded. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.